Welcome to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Discover the personal drive, professional journeys, and business strategies that have made a real impact. It's success from the inside out.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we're chatting with Jeff Roberts. Jeff is the founder of Innovation Vista, an IT consulting firm that provides C-level IT leaders for strategic engagements. With over 25 years of IT leadership experience, Jeff has been recognized as a 5-time CIO and a finalist for Enterprise CIO of the Year. Since founding Innovation Vista in 2019, he has led successful IT transformations, M&A transactions, and digital transformations across various industries, and has been featured in numerous media outlets for his expertise. So Jeff, maybe start off by telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you're working on.
Happy to do that. And thank you, Matt, for having me on the show. So I have known my whole career that I wanted to be in IT, really from the time I was a teenager. So going through college, studying that, entering my entry-level jobs as a programmer, data modeler, had an opportunity to begin project management, and then from there to actually move up the org chart, if you will, into IT leadership positions. Worked my way up to CIO and began to get up to speed on the other side of the career ladder, if you will. So for my systems and data and analytics kind of training, I began to learn infrastructure, cybersecurity, operations, disaster recovery, things of that nature. So feel like I've sort of looked at the IT challenge from multiple angles. I served as CIO at 5 different mid-sized companies, mainly in the finance and real estate sector, just because there was opportunity there, and maybe because there was a sense that IT in those industries could move the needle. I did have some success creating revenue streams from IT, creating either upgrade sort of packages and features for systems, or analytics packages that we could sell to customers for an upcharge. One way or another, finding a way to bring in some top line growth. And when my 5th company that I was serving as CIO for was acquired in 2019, I decided, rather than trying to continue to stay in the W-2 world and define that next CIO role, to found Innovation Vista and to begin to provide some of those services that I'd had some success with as a CIO into particularly the middle market, mid-sized companies that they are complex enough in their IT to have challenges and opportunities, and maybe not so large that they feel like they have the budget for a full-time CIO. And so that really is our value proposition, is to bring that expertise into organizations that may not otherwise have it, that might otherwise be trying to operate their IT with middle managers or relying a lot on vendors.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of organizations that are like that, right? That have that dependency and not necessarily the expertise in house, which leaves you vulnerable to a lot of different things. Just specifically diving in on the Innovation Vista side, in the finance world, I have a finance background. So in the finance world, fractional CFOs that's a big industry, right? There's firms everywhere. They cover all of North America, all of the world, really. But I don't think that I'll call it the virtual CIO, which is what you guys are really doing. I don't think that's as big or maybe has as much of a history there. What has that been like going into that industry that doesn't necessarily or didn't necessarily exist even probably 20 years ago?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I think CFO was sort of the tip of the spear on this idea of fractional executives and the value of the expertise, and for companies to think about buying their guidance rather than hiring staff.
Yeah.
And that same model applies really across the C-suite. We see CMO firms very successfully offering fractional services, and the same is true for CIO.
Yeah.
The idea really is, the value of a C-suite executive is not as much putting in 40 hours a week, turning the crank on some kind of ongoing processes. The value where you really separate excellent performance from mediocre from poor is the wisdom and the strength of their insights and the direction and the vision that they cast for the organization. And those things can be paid for on a part-time basis or even a short-term basis. Um, so that value proposition really applies in our space. You could look at it as good or bad that it's smaller than the CFO, and I have swung between those two extremes. Believe me, I thought it was great when I first started out because it's an untapped potential.
Yeah.
There are a few firms that do what we do as a specialty. There are, I would say, 5 or 6 reputable competitors out there. Not a huge number, nowhere near the competition that other sectors may have. But there are a lot of IT support companies, custom software shops. There are a lot of companies like that that are trying to offer virtual CIO services. So I discovered very quickly that part of what I need to do is compete with people who have a completely different definition of what this is. And if you're getting virtual CIO help from your IT support company, they're helping you set your budget annually. They're making sure you have your licenses in place for your agreements and your software and hardware. It's a lot more tactical, and frankly, we feel it's a lot more aimed at making things easier for the support provider than it is really taking care of the strategic needs of the client.
Yeah.
So we try to separate from that group for sure. And then, among those that are specializing in the space, a lot of very smart people out there. It's very hard to separate. One way we have chosen to do that is building sort of a virtual organization. So we have avoided building a bench like most consulting firms do,
Yeah.
hiring consultants and then finding client work to keep them busy. We find client work, but rather than having a bench that we have to then assign whoever it is that is sitting there without anyone to invoice monthly, we actually subcontract each and every one of our projects to a hand-picked consultant from our network of over 400. So that selectivity really lets us choose a much better fit, we believe. It's night and day, actually, between getting the person who's there because they happen to be available versus
Yeah.
being able to select in a very careful, considered way who's got industry experience, who's a great fit for the level of complexity of the organization, who's used to dealing with multiple levels of committees, if that's the dynamic at the client, or who's not, and who's used to getting decision makers around a table and being ready with a plan of action, and you get a yes or no right there, and if that's the culture of the client. So that kind of flexibility really has been very strategic for us and really important for the level of service that we want to offer clients.
Yeah. Can you just explain what the role of a CIO would be in an organization, and maybe pick an organizational size? Because if it's sub $1 million revenue versus $1 billion plus in revenue, those are going to be very, very different things.
Right. That's a great point. And I can speak mainly to our sweet spot for clientele is around 50 million up to $1 billion in revenue. So the CIO is the top executive in charge of the IT group. So they are looking after the network, the IT help desk, the infrastructure, cybersecurity, systems group, data, analytics and reporting group, the training and change management aspect of IT. So really the full responsibility, whether that's staff on the org chart A lot of our clients are in the neighborhood of 30 to 100 in IT. Or in some cases, companies have leaned more on outsourced providers. So it's a very heavy vendor oversight role,
Right.
setting parameters and policies and monitoring that the vendors are delivering as they should.
Yeah.
So there's some spectrum of what it looks like, but ultimately the CIO is the person in the C-suite that is responsible for IT. Not only what happens, but the strategy of what comes next, making sure that the investments and the work you put in today are leading you somewhere that will be a better place architecturally and in terms of IT's capabilities, really to empower the whole organization.
And would it be fair to say when you look at those smaller firms that are, quasi trying to compete in that space, but they're doing it from an operational standpoint, is it fair to say that what you guys are offering is strategic level, what those other firms are offering is more on the operational level?
It's well said. Absolutely. Yeah, and very purposefully, I think the selections we've made to build our network. I have personally vetted 1,200 plus consultants that are C-level, former CIOs, CTOs, chief security officers, et cetera. And so you can tell from that ratio, about a third of them make the cut.
Right.
And the reason for the 2/3 not making our cut is really their mindset about the role. Many IT executives have this view that IT is about keeping the lights on, that we are about efficiency, not spending any money that we don't have to, and doing, running a platform for the lowest possible price point is how I heard one person phrase that. And look, efficiency is a good thing, but it's not the whole story. And what that mindset is missing is the contributions that technology can make. Now we're in 2024, right? You've got digital transformation all over the place. AI is this huge buzzword. Every industry is being disrupted. You have to think really as a business leader strategically, a business leader before a technology leader. And what is our business model? Where do our revenues come from? What are our costs? What's variable? What's fixed? How can we change the knobs and dials on that with technology in order to make a more successful and faster growing company? And so this idea of efficiency or keeping the lights on and keeping the hackers away, that's table stakes. That's not the whole story.
Yeah.
So about 2/3 of the consultants kind of stop in their vision of their role, too short in our mind. And we have trademarked the phrase "innovate beyond efficiency" because we hear so often people say efficiency as if it's the holy grail endpoint that all IT groups must aim for.
Yeah.
It's not the endpoint. It's a good place. There are nice things that come once you have an efficient IT platform, but that's nothing compared to the sort of contributions you can make by bringing in revenue, helping drive market share, taking business away from your competitors. That is the sort of thing that boards of directors really care about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can't talk about, or sorry, I can't talk to somebody in the CIO world and not ask about CrowdStrike.
Yeah.
So there's might be some people that don't know what that is, but I'm going to ask you, mate, could you give us a high level overview of what that was, what happened, and then maybe how the CIO world prepares for something like that, acts during it, and then what they do post something like that?
Yeah, no, it's a very timely question. So this is about a week and a half ago now. A worldwide computing crash occurred due to one update that was pushed by a very popular endpoint security tool called CrowdStrike. Like every company, they put out product updates, and when they're ready, they push the button and then all of the systems worldwide that are subscribed receive that update and install that update. Unfortunately, this update was improperly tested. Actually, their automated testing at CrowdStrike failed completely. And rather than stopping the process, it failed in a way where they did not recognize that the test had not run. The code was actually buggy and had problems. So when that update went out, computers all over the world were hit with the blue screen of death, right? We all know that that blue screen that comes when Windows is not able to successfully start. And you're talking, I mean, tens, hundreds of millions of devices. CrowdStrike is that popular, that much of a market share in that space. So yeah, you had Microsoft level crashes, you had hospitals, schools, businesses, airports, airlines. You know, some were hit harder than others, but you had Atlanta in particular being a hub for Delta, huge reliance on CrowdStrike and Windows that were not able to bring their systems online for nearly a week. So trying to operate their business without their computing platform, manually making phone calls, trying to shift people around, make sure the crews had the planes they need and were where they were supposed to be when they needed to be. All these things computers have begun to take care of for all of us suddenly stopped working. So lots of parts of the economy ground to a halt. And there are lawsuits already. Class action lawsuit has been filed, and there are questions about whether CrowdStrike will even survive this incident, which is horrible to think about. An entire enterprise that's been built with the blood, sweat, and tears of thousands of people could be destroyed with one mistake and a framework in their testing processes that did not understand when the test itself was not able to run, but instead thought it was a pass. Just tragic, horrible, frustrating thing that in 2024 it should not happen.
Yeah.
But it's just proof of the complexity of these systems, the interconnectedness of these systems. We don't think we have single points of failure, but especially in the security space, it's been such a huge theme for these vendors to subscribe to the updates, and for good reason, right? New attacks are developed, and when they put in a protection against those attacks, you want to get access to those as soon as possible so that your organization doesn't fall prey to the attack. So in the cybersecurity space especially, it's very difficult to convince someone to hold off subscribing to these updates and instead to take them on a 2-week delay or something like that, like you may do with other software. That's just not going to be the answer very often. So those things are being debated now. What do we do? Is there regulation needed, right? Some people immediately go to the answer of government. It is an infrastructure service that society needs to survive. So I can see the point of people considering that angle. I happen to think that the class action lawsuit will be enough of a deterrent that you better believe every software company in the world right now is double, triple checking their testing protocol, their change management, their release cycle to make sure that nothing that is not working properly could ever go out the door. But this did, and so the pain was absolutely felt, and still in some cases being felt. Something like a week and a half later, there's still echoes of this in some places.
Yeah, it's funny. I as I was thinking of an analogy, or I should say, this analogy kind of popped in my head to it, and I kind of look at it similar to the airline industries. You know, when you look back at when I'll call it commercial travel was more modernized or became more efficient, so that more people were doing it. You're talking the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and then it really became much more normal in the 80s and 90s, and obviously where we are now. And one of the reasons behind that is they've always said every crash that happens makes air travel safer because you're pinpointing, this could go wrong, this could go wrong, this could go wrong. Well, now you're creating planes that will never let that fail, or they're creating a triple the redundancy in it or whatnot.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's what comes out of this is this makes it better to the point where no company is ever going to have a failure like this again. Now, is that realistically going to happen? Probably not, but maybe on this scale, it might not happen like that.
Yeah, and this was the largest crash in world history
Yeah.
of computing infrastructure. So, yeah, if not this, then what, right? Like, what could be that impetus for that sort of change?
Mhm.
I can tell you just from client conversations and across our network of consultants, things are still spinning their own magnetic field here on this. So
Mhm.
it definitely has had the effect of a wake-up call for the industry, and particularly anyone involved in software or hardware deployments, firmware upgrades, everything around that automated upgrade kind of concept is being scrutinized, and even the way we think about deploying those things being scrutinized. Do we have group A, group B? Do we separate and isolate the change so that it's not possible for us to wake up one morning for everything to be dead?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot there, and look, we never root for things like this to happen, but I will say when things like this do happen, our phone tends to ring a little more frequently the
Yeah.
following couple of weeks,
Yeah.
right? There are a lot more people wanting to understand what's being done out there, what's working for others, what are best practices, but not only best in the sense of the industry, what do they do, but best practices for a certain platform and for a certain organization.
Oh, okay.
Uh, and that's critical actually, because we have a lot of clients that started with best practices. You can download a lot of wisdom from the internet, a lot of white papers and Gartner Magic Quadrants for what are the best products for XYZ. A lot of that is free. It's available on the internet, and so um, sometimes the wisdom of the consultant is understanding when certain things are too much, or certain things are great on their own but don't work well together,
Mm.
or are not aligned with a particular organization's strategy or growth curve or geographic footprint, or all these variables that can come in on decisions like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I just shifting over to AI a little bit because I mean, obviously, like you said, there's a lot going on with that, and from my point of view, at least probably a little bit different in your world, but it's less than 2 years old, right? From the real consumer base, ChatGPT came out in I think December of 22 to the masses there. Um, what do you guys do with organizations that clearly need the upgrades in AI and they need the assistance in walking through that? And the average people, we don't have that. What do you do with organizations like that?
Yeah, it's actually probably the number one service we're providing right now is
Yeah,
AI strategy consulting. Um, so our help can take several forms. Some organizations know what they want to do and they want expert help in making it happen. So for a firm like ours, we are asked for program heads, consultants that have successfully stood up AI programs. Can you, contract them with us so that we can leverage that expertise as we stand up ours?
yeah,
Um, that's fairly common. Even more common are companies that don't know what they should be doing with AI. They get a
right.
mandate often from on high, right? The board of directors or the CEO says, we need to do something with AI.
Yeah, yeah,
They have often it's a conversation with another CEO, or some horror story that someone hears that someone got disrupted or what have you. And everyone has this fear of missing out with AI. So
yeah,
what are we doing? We should be doing something. If we're not doing anything, let's figure it out. And we get those kind of calls more frequently. Um, it's interesting. You said it, we're only 2 years in. A lot of people have, with generative AI, you're right, in a
yeah,
real commercially viable sense, it's 2 years old. But there are flavors of AI that are 10, 15, 20 plus years old, in machine learning, and some of the real breakthroughs that occurred with deep learning 15 plus years ago.
mhm,
So It depends. That's really the answer. How mature are these things? How easy are some things to do versus difficult versus impossible? How complex, how expensive are they going to be? So we
Yeah.
bring that sort of awareness and expertise. And our approach really with most clients is we talk about iterating the strategy. So our analogy is we have headlights on a car that can see ahead for some distance, but
Yeah.
not 5+ years right now because it's changing that fast. And so trying to create a long-term AI strategy right now is foolhardy,
Yeah.
naive, and dangerous. So we think more about 6 months, 12 months ahead. So let's create a strategy for what are we going to do next. And we've got some materials out there. I would direct people to our website. We just, I think, posted an article very recently about a webinar actually that I offered on our approach to AI strategy. So that's a 1 hour talk uh, available for free on our website that just speaks to this iterative idea and working backward from use cases. So there's some sense where organizations do need to figure out how aggressive do they need to be with regards to AI. And the main variable there is it going to depend on their ability to, or is it going to drive their ability to survive and thrive in the new world?
Right.
Or is it not that, and it's maybe a little bit more of a tool that delivers efficiency and capabilities? If it's survive and thrive, you need to be aggressive, and you really need to have an attitude of we need to do a lot of things. We need to get fast. We need to build muscle, if you will, on AI generally, and we'll figure it out later. What does that mean for where we're going to go? If it's not survive and thrive, but it's more just opportunistic, then it's ROI based, like every other main business decision.
Yeah.
And so we walk clients through this process, sort of determining how strategic this is for them, and then trying to brainstorm and surface ideas that we bring to the table, as well as that the client has. Often the best ideas are locked up in their brains. They're living and breathing their processes all day, every day, and they can think of ways if you set the table correctly and set up a brainstorm to really maximize the quality of the ideas you get. They can come out with just amazing AI concepts that are possible, that are feasible and affordable, and in some cases are absolute home runs with respect to ROI.
Yeah.
Uh, and then you know you manage those processes and run those projects. You deliver, you learn. You know the industry is moving. All right, you understand what's now possible that didn't used to be. What data do we have that we maybe didn't used to? Data is really the food for AI. And then you do it all over again. That's our model is you need to relook at strategy every 6 to 12 months
Yeah.
in a fast moving space like this, because again, anything else is beyond what your headlights of that car can see, and you run the risk of running off the road.
Yeah. You're just guessing at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of our listeners would be on the entrepreneurial side of things. So on the typically smaller size businesses, certainly, you can go up to the medium size, but what advice would you give them, particularly in the space, not even AI, but just kind of in the IT space? What advice would you give them that would, help them most in their small business?
Um, yeah. So with respect to, the leading edge and what's new, I would say realize that it's moving faster than it ever has before. Don't fall into this trap of thinking that the tools you use, the systems that you used for the last 5 years that worked fine for you and enabled you to be profitable, don't assume because that happened that the next 5 years you will be fine doing the same.
Yeah.
Because things are changing and your competitors are creating new things, even smaller companies. We have these conversations with clients with revenue as low as 15, $20 million.
Mhm.
Uh, there's all these startups out there aimed specifically at AI. a lot of them are creating these niche use case tools and models. If one of those happens to land in your industry and it's not made commercially available, maybe it's acquired by one of your competitors.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to use fear as a motivating principle ever, but I would call attention to business leaders. Just realize what it means, the level of acceleration of change that is happening. You really can't count on what you knew before. And I guess the other thing I would highlight is what that means for blind spots. So if you are a leader that doesn't have as strong a grasp on technology and that leading edge, it's not like not understanding the law or GAAP accounting principles or concepts in marketing that for the most part are unchanged. It's not like that at all. If you don't know what the leading edge is with technology, it could mean your organization is at risk because the level of impact and the speed of impact, you can't see it coming always. It's a tornado, not a hurricane. Think of it that way. You don't know. And so, yeah, it's exciting in the sense of what's now possible that didn't used to be and what's feasible, but it's also scary because that means competitors can be doing these things very, very quickly and can get pricing power or can capability power. They can deliver things that their competitors don't literally have the ability to do. And when they get that, they can start dominating a space and very quickly put everyone else out of business. We've seen it over and over again. So that's just, kind of some thoughts on just pay attention to the leading edge. And if technology is not your thing and keeping up with it, I don't want to make this a sales pitch, but this is no small part of why people engage us, even for something like 4 hours a week, to just stay in contact, stay up to date with your strategy, bring new capabilities and ideas to the table for very affordable rates. I feel like it's money well spent with the risk and the shift that is underway that is just seismic.
Yeah, no, definitely. Jeff, if somebody wanted to learn more about your company or what you're doing or look for those services or maybe just connect with you, where would they go for that?
Innovationvista.com is our website. I mentioned we've got everything from articles and thought leadership pieces to webinars. We for better or worse, we give away a lot of our best ideas. We have found that it's very hard to explain what we do and why we think we're the best at what we do.
Yeah.
And so doing that, we have found it's more effective, and people can watch a webinar for an hour and really know, all right, if we engage Innovation Vista for an AI strategy, we know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And do we want that or not? That's a separate question, but there's a lot of rich material out there, and we're very active on LinkedIn and Twitter as well with content.
Awesome. Well, certainly appreciate having you on the show today, and wish you guys the best moving forward, and look forward to chatting again.
Likewise. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Jeff.
You've been listening to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Want to be our next guest? Visit beyondwealthpodcast.ca/guest. See you on the next episode.